Okay, you were starting to talk about Planet of the Apes.
Yes. We rolling? So I went over I signed to do Planet of the Apes. And I went over, and it was an extremely tough show. It was probably the toughest show I ever did. The weather was hot. We were at Fox Ranch all the time. Um, it must have been 105 or 10 out there, day after day after day. The poor apes, the people that were playing the apes, they kept them in air-conditioned trailers. It was so hot. They couldn't eat. They had to eat with a straw at lunchtime, and that was it. We had James McNaughton was one of them. The astronauts, I can't remember the name of the other gentleman, and of course Roddy McDowell. Roddy used to come up to my house. He lived just a couple blocks from me, and of course, you know, he was a renowned still photographer. So he used to come up and spend time, and I thought I did a good job on that series, but it only lasted one season.
What were some of the challenges of filming all the prosthetics and that kind of thing?
Well, they absorb so much light that used to bother me. You really, you really had to. I don't know. I didn't find, to be honest with you, that's a good question. I didn't find it any trouble at all. But I had been used to prosthesis from Star Trek. Uh, and they had done a couple pictures, and I'm sure that they went through the original problems of the prosthesis on the original features. So whatever it was, they had ironed it out by the time that I came aboard. They didn't make those outfits up for the series. And we did 13 of them, and they canceled it. And I wasn't sorry. It was a very tough show. Very tough show. And so I sat around, looking for a job. Called my agent. Nothing was coming up. So I played around a little more, drank a little more, and I decided I better get a job. So got a call from Columbia. The cameraman on Policewoman was sick, the Angie Dickinson show. And he wanted to know if I could come in for a couple shows. I said, sure. So I went over there for a couple days, wound up with a 5-year contract. In any case, I did the shows. I had known Angie quite well over a long period of years. She liked me very much. She wanted me to do her show the next year. In the meantime, one of the directors that I had worked with was going to do a pilot at Columbia, and he asked me if I would do it. It was called The First 36 Hours of Dr. Durant with Scott Hyland. And so I did the show. While I'm doing the show, I mean, I was doing a good job. I was breaking a lot of shadows across people, from the shutters and real intimate stuff. I had a good feel for that particular show. So during the show, the head of the studio television, Seymour Friedman, came to me and he said, your work is like a Rembrandt. He said, how would you like a contract? We'd like to sign you, put you on a contract. Now, then again, let's see, this was 75. Nobody was on a contract in those days, just nobody. So he said, I'd like to put you on a personal contract to Columbia Television. I said, oh, okay, you know. But let me tell you, a contract is only good for one person. That's the studio. They promise you 40 weeks work. They're going to get 40 weeks. And usually you work 45 weeks. Yep. Because I wound up doing second units, doing backgrounds. They kept you busy. In any case, I signed the contract, and I was happy. You know, I knew I had a home, and I knew I had a steady income, and that's what everybody worries about in this business. You know, hardly anybody works all the time, let alone have a contract. So I did the pilot, Dr. Durant, and then they put me on a thing with Stephanie Powers called Feather and Father. It was a funny show, but it didn't last long. So I was doing that show, and I was on the set one day, and Columbia had gone on a thrift binge, and they were cutting down on everything. So they didn't want to use Eastman film anymore. They thought they could save a lot of money by using Fuji film, Japanese film. So they told everybody, you're going to switch to Fuji film. Okay. Well, the first Fuji film was so saturated with yellow red that there wasn't anything you could do to get it out. I mean, it was just overly saturated. And everybody was complaining because the faces were all going red and purple. Now the lab is saying, shoot it the same way you would Eastman. Well, it's not true. You can't shoot it the same way as Eastman. They don't have the same printing lights. They don't have the same developing time of that film. So I had been to Japan when I was an operator on a Cary Grant picture with Harry Stradling. And I knew that the sun was a lot warmer in Japan. Let me quickly explain. Color is based on Kelvin, the temperature. And it goes, the hotter it gets, the bluer it goes. And you could say red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, violet, you know, and you've got the whole spectrum. And you have to base color that if a lamp drops 200, say you have a 10K and it drops 100 amps, you're going to see a difference in the skin tone. It's going to get warmer. If it drops 200 amps, you're going to see a bigger difference. So I figured that the Kelvin in Japan was about 5,000. That's what they made the film for. In America, it's 5,600. That's what Eastman's made at. So I didn't know what to do, and I called the people from Fuji, and I remember them coming over, and the head of it, his name was Harry Teitelbaum. He was okay, but you know, he was selling the product. So I'm there, and he introduces me to the Japanese technician. And I'm sitting there, and I'm complaining about, I can't get the red yellow out, and how bad the film is, how noisy it is, because they didn't have a jet backing on it, like Eastman, and how poor quality it was. And this Japanese technician is going. So I thought I was getting something accomplished. So they thanked me, and they left. And the assistant director says, you know, that guy, the Japanese gentleman, didn't understand one word you said. He doesn't speak English. So I said, oh, okay, enough for that. So I went over to Eastman, Kodak. I said, look, you know, I've been a big booster of yours. Help me. And I brought Fujifilm with me. So we shot tests and had them developed, and sure enough, it was red yellow. So the head guy there, the head engineer, figured out that if we use blue filters on the lights, that blue takes red yellow out, that it would desaturate the red yellow. Also, by putting a blue filter on the lights, it took the Kelvin temperature of the light from, say, 3,300 up to 3,600 to get it bluer. And I said, I'll try it. I'll try it. So I went in and I started to put blues on all the lights. And you'd look at my set and it would look, you would say, do you know what you're doing? That's what you'd say to me. Do you know what you're doing? And I shot, and sure enough, it pulled the red yellow out. Now, it didn't look like Eastman, but it didn't look like Fuji. So I'll tell you how small this world is. I'm on a set, a Feather and Father, and who comes in but a wonderful friend of mine and a great cameraman, Phil Lathrop. Several nominations. I worked with him on Day of Wine and Roses. He was a director of photography. So he comes in, and we're working, and he's looking around. He doesn't say anything. He said, and the director was there, standing with him. His name was Buzz Kulik. So he said, how the hell do you use this film? He said, it's the worst film. I can't get the red yellow out. I said, if you put blue on the lights, it's going to pull that red yellow out. Oh, yeah? Yeah, and I explained to him about the Kelvin. This director is listening, and Phil says, well, thank you. I'm going to try it. A week later, I get a call to go up and see this director, who was a producer. So I didn't know who he was. I knew he had done a thing called, what was it? The Brian song. Well, about Brian Piccolo, the football player. It was well recognized. So I went over to see Buzz, and I said, hello, how are you? And he said, sit down. And he was a very tough guy. He says, how'd you like to work with me? I said, oh, yeah, I would. He said, well, let me tell you a story. I'm standing there. You're giving this guy information on Fuji's film, how to do it, this and that. He said, I want a guy like you. Okay. So he called Seymour Friedman, who was head of Columbia, and said, I'd like Jerry on my next show. And that show was Kill Me If You Can with Alan Alda. And he played the Red Light Bandit, based on a true story in California, where a guy would go up in Mulholland in like a squad car, the lovers in the car, he would stop, open the door, handcuff the guy, and then assault the women. Now, this was a story when they capture him, and it's 12 years on death row, and how he was executed for a non-capital punishment crime. And all of the ingredients of the judge who told the jurors that he was a pervert, which he shouldn't have done, and he would, they wouldn't want his daughter around him. That's okay. Now this is going back an hour ago. This is where you asked me about the prosthesis, right? That turned blue. It wasn't Leonard Nimoy. Alan Alda, in this picture, had to wear a prosthesis because Carol Chessman's nose was crooked. So on the end of it, it was like this. So they put it on, and that's when I told Buzz. I said, Buzz, that nose is going to be dead and green. And Buzz told me, mind my own business. Okay, so we shoot, that day, and the next day in dailies, everybody's saying, why is the nose green? Why is the nose green? And I never said a word. And Buzz appreciated the fact that I didn't get up and say, well, I told him. We had a bond. And we do this show, and I thought I did really a good job on it. And that was the beginning of a good relationship with a producer-director. From then on, I did all of Buzz Kulik's projects. Next show we did, I think, was Ziegfeld, The Man and His Women. It was a 3-hour special. And he came to me and he said, you have to realize that this is not a musical. It's a drama with music in it. He said, so don't be thinking of this as lighting for a musical. I said, okay. So I went in there figuring it as a drama, and they had 4 lovely women in it. They had Valerie Perrine, Barbara Parkins, Samantha Eggers played his wife, and the girl who had the lead in Chorus Line, I can't think of her name, was in it. And we shot this show, and I shot it like a drama. Had great musical numbers too, and was nominated for the Emmy and won it of that year. So then, right after that, Buzz wanted to do From Here to Eternity, an 8-hour miniseries with Kim Basinger and Natalie Wood and Bill Devane. And we were going to go to Honolulu. So I said yes. And it was a wonderful show. There wasn't anybody any sweeter than Natalie Wood. And I had worked with Natalie when she was young at Warner Brothers, not as a director of photography, just on the camera crew. And it was a lovely show. I was nominated for that. It had to be 80, 79 or 80. Bill Devane was a wonderful guy. Kim Basinger was very shy and a nice lady. We had Peter Boyle. He was a good actor. And I as a matter of fact, it was on the satellite yesterday. It was. The kid, Steve Whalesback, was in it. He played Pruitt, the Montgomery Cliff role. So we finished that show, and I was nominated again for the Emmy. And right then they had a strike. It was the directors or the actors or somebody shut the studios down. And it was a long strike. So the minute they shut the studios down, they laid me off. They called it force majeure. So I was mad because the producers are getting paid, the assistant directors are getting paid. You know, everybody. And I had a contract, and I wanted them to honor it. And they wouldn't. So I was getting upset with Columbia. And I took my contract to a lawyer, and he read it, and in it, it said, if they don't pick you up after 6 weeks layoff for salary, you are entitled to cancel the contract. So I said, oh boy. Meantime, I had to turn down a picture with McQueen, the hunter that Buzz Kulik was doing. It was a private, they had made a sweetheart deal. And the studio wouldn't let me, they wouldn't let me do the picture, and they wouldn't let me out of my contract. So there was sweetheart deals being made, and I couldn't do any of them. And I was getting upset with production there for doing this to me. And I told them, let me do the hunter, because I'll get, $4 or $5 grand a week, and you can have half of it, whatever you want. No, we won't. We don't know when we're going to go back. So I did the wrong thing in a way. I stepped out of my contract. And the studio told me, you do that, and you're going to be working here anymore. So I said, well, okay, So I stepped out of the contract because they were settling. They wanted me to come back. I had started a picture. I was wrong. I had started a picture with Susan Blakely. Is that her name? An actress? Oh, it's a movie of the week. And I should have committed myself to finish it. But I had a wonderful script. I met an English director called Peter Collison, who had just done a picture with Bill Holden. And he loved my work. And he wanted me to do this thing called Gangster Chronicles, which was the inception of the mafia to the modern day. So how could I turn down, a project like that? So I stepped out of my contract and I went over and I did the Gangster Chronicles, which again I was nominated for the Emmy. That must have been '81. It may have been the best thing I ever did, lighting wise. I mean, I did a very good job lighting wise, creating 1905 with source lighting from the lamps, So this director, Peter Collison, we were prepping the show, and he said to me, I don't feel good. I'm going to go to UCLA and get a checkup. I think I have a cold. I said, okay, Peter. I mean, we had a good relationship. Next day, he's not there. And I said, where's Peter? He has cancer. What? He has cancer. What are you going to do? Oh, well, we brought in another director. Well, this director, he wanted another cameraman. And we just didn't get along. We fought. I took his chair one time and broke it in front of the crew. And he had a personal vendetta. He called me up one night and said I was the worst cameraman he ever had. And he'd see I'd never work again and blah, 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 blah. Well, he's now working as a part-time actor if he can get a job. So going through that show was really tough. And they were going to take me off. They said my lighting was too dark. It would never transmit. And I said, no, it can't be. I know what I'm doing. Anyhow, I got so frustrated. I called up Fred Silverman, back in New York. Had a couple drinks, and I said, I'll call him. So I got the secretary, and I said, I want to talk to Mr. Silverman. I'm so-and-so. I won the Emmy last year. And they put me through. Now here I got Fred Silverman on the phone in one hand and cocktail in the other. And I said, Mr. Silverman, they're going to take me off this show. They say you don't like my lighting. And I said, I think it's the best thing I ever did. And Fred Silverman said, are you kidding, Jerry? I love your work. There's no way that we don't like your work. He said, you just go, just relax. Everything will be fine. So, get a call. I finished the show, and on the last day they fired me. They fired me on the last day. And I guess that's what upset me. That's when I called Silverman. But they had like 5 days of pickups to do, little things, second units. So I told them they had dismissed me. And Silverman, for some reason, got upset. He said, don't worry, you'll hear from them. It turned out to be a fiasco. I get a phone call the next day. Now, that's a true story, so help me God. I think it's the only time this ever happened to Universal. Get a call the next day, please come up to the tower, the infamous Black Tower. So I go up to the Black Tower, the 14th floor, and there's all of the production people seated. And they said, you were victimized. They never should have done that to you. We love your work. We want you to go back on the series. Because they sold it as a series. I don't want to go back on that with that director. Never work with that son of a bitch again. And I meant it. I would rather starve. So they were dumbfounded. Here's a guy you nominate for the Emmy and he don't want to work. They said, well, we'll tell you what. We'll keep you on salary until a project comes up that you can do. And I said, that sounds good. So I was sitting home for 6 weeks, getting about 4,500 a week. And then they call me. They want me to go over and meet Jim Aubrey, who had been president of CBS. So I go over to meet Jim Aubrey, and his director was Walter Doniger. I heard he was very tough, very tough. So first thing he says to me is, "Oh, you're the guy that doesn't use lights." I said, "I guess so." He says, "Well, look, I have this pilot to do with Kevin Dobson, and I've run some of your work, and I think it's great. Would you like to do the pilot with Walter Doniger?" And I said, "Yes." So I did the pilot, and Walter turned out to be the nicest man you've ever seen. I mean, he appreciated hard work, but he was the kind of guy that used to look on the floor if the crab dolly man missed his mark. He'd go crazy, you know? So we did the Shannon pilot up in San Francisco, and I came home, and they wanted me to do the series, but I had something else cooking. I'm trying to think. Oh, okay. This was 82. I was really getting tired of television. So Jerry London, who lives down the street, and I had done, it's a series at Columbia called Joe Forrester. It was like Police Story. We had done several together, and he liked me. And he was like king of the mini-series, because 80, when I was nominated for Gangster Chronicle, he was nominated for Shogun. So he said to me, "Why don't you do Movie of the Week with me?" I said, "Good." So for about 3 years, I worked with Jerry and did Movies of the Week. We did a lot of them, banging them out. And then,
What were some of the challenges of doing a movie of the week? What were some of the challenges of doing a movie of the week on your end?
I don't know. I don't think there's any challenge if you know what you're doing. Funny, I got a call. I was doing a Dick Van Dyke Movie of the Week, and the girl who was with Polaroid, Marion Hartley, and Don Taylor. Was it Don Taylor? Was he
Was it The Dropout Father?
Dropout Father? I'm doing that, and they come to me and they said, "What would you do if you were shooting in the Schubert building and you had all of that glass, and you had to 85 them? 85 is put the filter on the glass so the sun won't go so blue. It'll go natural. It's a red, kind of a pink filter." I said, "Well, I wouldn't put 85s on. I'd do it in the camera." You got the job. I mean, it was so simple. I mean, I'm talking about ability and the option to know what you're doing. Challenges are only when you don't know what you're doing. I never really had a lot of what I call challenges. So I got the show.
Actually, let's stop there to change the tape.